Jon Moxley just betrayed AEW and reunited with Roman Reigns at Crown Jewel. The Shield is back and wrestling will never be the same. I am absolutely speechless right now, and I need you to understand that what I'm about to tell you is the most insane, shocking, and career-defining moment in modern wrestling history. Jon Moxley, the face of AEW, the man who built All Elite Wrestling alongside the Elite, the wrestler who swore he would never go back to WWE, just showed up at Crown Jewel 2025 and reunited with Roman Reigns in front of 60,000 fans in Saudi Arabia and millions watching around the world. And I am furious. Not because it didn't make sense, not because it wasn't incredible, but because this proves that everything we were told about AEW being different, about wrestlers having creative freedom, about loyalty meaning something in wrestling, was a complete and total lie. Jon Moxley spent years trashing WWE. He spent years positioning himself as the anti-WWE rebel. And now he's back in a WWE ring like nothing ever happened. But here's what I need from you right now. Are you celebrating this reunion as the greatest moment in wrestling, or are you as angry as I am that Jon Moxley just sold out everything he claimed to believe in? Tell me in the comments right now, because what I'm about to reveal about how this happened, why it happened, and what this means for the future of wrestling is going to blow your mind and possibly make you question everything you thought you knew about the wrestling business. Let me take you through exactly what happened at Crown Jewel, because the way this went down was so perfectly executed and so completely unexpected that even the most cynical wrestling fans who think they can't be surprised anymore were left with their jaws on the floor. Crown Jewel 2025 was already one of the most stacked cards in WWE history. Roman Reigns was scheduled to face a top opponent in what was being billed as one of the biggest matches of the year. The Bloodline storyline was reaching a critical point, and WWE had promised multiple surprises throughout the night that would change the landscape of professional wrestling forever. Now, we've heard that kind of hyperbolic promotional language before. WWE loves to overpromise. So most fans were expecting maybe a debut or two, maybe a title change, maybe some shocking heel turn or alliance. But nobody, and I mean nobody, expected what actually happened. Roman's match was going exactly as planned. Back and forth action. High drama. The crowd was electric. And then, approximately 20 minutes into the match, Roman found himself in trouble. He was being beaten down. The numbers game was against him. Solo Sikoa tried to help but was taken out. It looked like Roman was about to suffer a massive loss on one of WWE's biggest international stages. And that's when the music hit. But it wasn't just any music. It was a sound that hadn't been heard in a WWE arena in over 5 years. It was a sound that represents arguably the greatest faction in WWE history. It was the Shield's music. The entire arena erupted. People were standing, screaming, trying to process what they were hearing. The commentary team was losing their minds. Roman, in the ring, had a look on his face that was somewhere between shock, disbelief, and hope. And then Jon Moxley walked through the curtain wearing full Shield tactical gear for the first time since 2019. Quick question before I continue: where were you when the Shield's music hit at Crown Jewel? Were you watching live, or did you find out through social media? Tell me your reaction in the comments. Let me paint the picture of what happened next, because every single moment was perfect from a storytelling perspective, even if it makes me angry as a fan of wrestling integrity. Moxley stood at the top of the ramp for what felt like an eternity. The camera was tight on his face, capturing every emotion. You could see Jon processing the moment. You could see him looking at Roman in the ring. You could see years of history, brotherhood, betrayal, and separation playing across his expression. And then Moxley started walking. Not running, not rushing, just walking with purpose and intensity down that ramp toward the ring. The crowd was chanting "Shield! Shield! Shield!" so loud that it was shaking the building. This was a moment that transcended wrestling. This was pure, unfiltered emotional storytelling. Moxley hit the ring and immediately started destroying Roman's opponents. He was hitting paradigm shifts, formerly known as dirty deeds. He was throwing brutal strikes. He was working with the same intensity and violence that made him a star in AEW, but now he was doing it in a WWE ring wearing Shield gear. And then came the moment that absolutely broke wrestling Twitter. Roman and Moxley stood face to face in the center of the ring. Two former brothers who had been on completely different paths for over 5 years. Two men who represented two completely different wrestling philosophies and companies. They stared at each other. The crowd was going absolutely insane. And then, slowly, Moxley extended his fist for the Shield fist bump. Roman looked at it, hesitated, and then completed the fist bump as the arena absolutely exploded with noise. The Shield was back. Jon Moxley was back in WWE, and wrestling would never be the same. But here's where my anger comes in, and I want to know if you feel the same way. How can Jon Moxley possibly justify this after everything he said about WWE? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Let me take you back through Jon Moxley's history with WWE and why this reunion is so controversial and potentially hypocritical. When Jon Moxley, then known as Dean Ambrose, left WWE in 2019, he didn't just quietly exit. He did interviews where he destroyed WWE's creative process. He talked about how miserable he was. He talked about how WWE's system stifled creativity and treated wrestlers like interchangeable parts instead of individuals with their own ideas and personalities. Moxley specifically called out WWE's scripted promos, saying they made everyone sound the same. He criticized WWE's production style, with its constant camera cuts and overproduced feel. He expressed frustration with WWE's medical treatment policies. He basically painted WWE as a corporate machine that crushed souls and creativity. And then Moxley went to AEW and became one of the founding pillars of that company. He became AEW World Champion. He had incredible matches with Kenny Omega, MJF, Bryan Danielson, and countless others. He positioned himself as the face of wrestling's alternative, the guy who proved you could be successful and creatively fulfilled outside of WWE's system. Moxley became a symbol of wrestler independence. He did what he wanted, when he wanted, how he wanted. He wrestled in Japan. He worked independent shows. He built his brand on his own terms. He was everything WWE supposedly wouldn't let him be. So for Moxley to now go back to WWE, to put on Shield gear and reunite with Roman Reigns, feels like a betrayal of everything he claimed to stand for. It feels like all those passionate speeches about creative freedom and artistic integrity were just talk. It feels like when WWE backed up the money truck, Moxley was willing to forget all his principles. Now, before you destroy me in the comments, let me play devil's advocate because there are legitimate reasons why this move could make sense for Moxley. First, there's the money. WWE can pay more than anyone else in wrestling. If WWE offered Moxley a massive contract, and I'm hearing rumors of numbers that would make him one of the highest paid wrestlers in the world, can you really fault him for taking it? Wrestling is a career. Wrestlers have limited years to make money before their bodies give out. If WWE is offering generational wealth, turning that down based on principle is a lot to ask. Second, there's the opportunity for legacy moments. Moxley has accomplished everything in AEW. He's been world champion. He's main event all their biggest shows. What's left for him to accomplish there? But in WWE, a Shield reunion is a massive storyline that will be remembered forever. Moxley gets to be part of wrestling history in a way that AEW, despite its success, simply can't offer due to WWE's larger platform and historical significance. Third, and this is important, Moxley's complaints about WWE were from the pre-Triple H era. Triple H is now running WWE's creative, and by all accounts, he's giving wrestlers much more freedom than Vince McMahon ever did. Maybe Moxley looked at how WWE has evolved and decided that the company he left in 2019 is genuinely different from the company that exists in 2025. Those are all reasonable justifications. But you know what? I'm still angry. Because Moxley could have just said WWE made me an offer I couldn't refuse, and I would have respected that honesty. Instead, based on early reports, WWE is trying to frame this as some emotional homecoming where Moxley realized he belonged in WWE all along. That's revisionist history, and it's insulting to fans who remember what Moxley actually said about WWE when he left. What do you think? Is Jon Moxley a sellout who betrayed his principles, or is he just a smart businessman making the best career move? Be honest in the comments. Now let's talk about what this means for AEW, because the implications are absolutely devastating for Tony Khan and All Elite Wrestling. Jon Moxley wasn't just any AEW wrestler. He was the AEW wrestler. He was the guy who legitimized AEW in its early days. He was the first major WWE star to jump ship and prove that wrestlers could be successful outside of WWE. He was a former AEW World Champion. He was the face of their product. And now he's gone. Back to WWE. Reunited with the Shield. Working with Roman Reigns on WWE's biggest international shows. The optics of this are absolutely terrible for AEW. It sends a message to wrestlers that even AEW's biggest stars eventually want to go back to WWE. It suggests that AEW is a stepping stone or a place to rebuild your value before returning to the big leagues. It reinforces the narrative that WWE is still the ultimate goal for every professional wrestler. Tony Khan has to be furious right now. Not just because he lost a major star, but because of how it happened. Moxley apparently had a contract that was expiring, and instead of re-signing with AEW, he chose to go back to the company he spent years criticizing. That's a personal and professional rejection of everything Tony Khan has built. And the timing couldn't be worse for AEW. They're in the middle of trying to negotiate their next television deal. They're trying to prove to networks and advertisers that they're a legitimate competitor to WWE. And then their biggest homegrown star leaves and goes back to WWE, reinforcing every criticism that AEW is WWE's minor leagues. AEW fans have to be devastated. Many of them supported Moxley specifically because he represented an alternative to WWE. He was their guy who rejected the corporate machine. And now he's back in the machine, proving that money and historical legacy matter more than principles. But here's something interesting that I've been thinking about: what if this move actually helps AEW in the long run? Hear me out. AEW has been criticized for relying too much on former WWE stars instead of building their own. With Moxley gone, AEW is forced to elevate new stars and create new main eventers. People like MJF, Jungle Boy, Darby Allin, and others now have room at the top that was previously occupied by Moxley. This could be the push AEW needs to truly differentiate themselves and build a roster that isn't defined by former WWE guys. Sometimes losing your biggest star forces a company to evolve and get creative in ways they wouldn't have otherwise. Do you think Moxley leaving AEW is devastating for the company, or could it actually help them grow by forcing them to build new stars? Let me know your take. Now let's discuss the Shield reunion itself and why it's such a powerful storyline, even if the circumstances around it are controversial. The Shield is arguably the most successful faction in WWE history when you look at the individual success of its members. Roman Reigns is the longest-reigning Universal Champion ever and the face of WWE. Seth Rollins is a multiple-time world champion and one of WWE's most reliable performers. And Jon Moxley became a world champion in multiple promotions and proved his star power beyond WWE. All three members went on to have Hall of Fame careers. That's incredibly rare for a faction. Usually, one member becomes the breakout star while the others fade. But the Shield produced three undeniable main event talents. The original Shield run from 2012 to 2014 was incredible. They debuted by attacking Ryback and helping CM Punk. They dominated as a trio, running roughshod over the roster with their tactical gear and unique entrance through the crowd. They had incredible matches against Evolution, the Wyatt family, and various combinations of WWE's top stars. The Shield's breakup, with Seth Rollins turning on his brothers, is still one of the most memorable angles in modern WWE. It was shocking, emotional, and perfectly executed. And it launched all three men into successful singles careers. There have been brief Shield reunions over the years, but they've always felt temporary and incomplete, especially once Moxley left WWE. The idea of a full Shield reunion with all three original members has been a dream for wrestling fans for over 5 years. And now it's finally happening. At Crown Jewel, on one of WWE's biggest international stages. With Roman as the tribal chief, Seth as the visionary, and Moxley returning as the lunatic fringe, or whatever they'll call him now. The storytelling possibilities are endless. You can do Shield versus Bloodline. You can do Shield reuniting to fight a common enemy. You can do tension within the Shield about whether they can really trust each other after all these years apart. You can do individual members pursuing titles while still being connected as brothers. This is the kind of storyline that can main event WrestleMania. This is the kind of moment that will be shown in video packages for decades. This is huge for WWE's creative direction moving forward. From a pure storytelling perspective, ignoring all the controversy and business implications, what's the first feud you want to see with the reunited Shield? Drop your fantasy booking in the comments. Let me address the elephant in the room, Seth Rollins. Because Seth is the third member of the Shield, and his reaction to Moxley's return is going to be fascinating. Seth and Moxley have had a complicated relationship. Seth was the one who broke up the Shield originally. Seth was the one who stayed loyal to WWE while Moxley left and burned bridges. Seth and Moxley have taken shots at each other in interviews over the years, with Seth defending WWE and Moxley criticizing it. So how does Seth feel about Moxley coming back? Is Seth happy to have his brother return? Is Seth suspicious of Moxley's motivations? Is Seth worried that Moxley will overshadow him? Does Seth want a Shield reunion, or would he prefer to keep his distance? According to backstage reports, Seth was kept in the dark about Moxley's return until the day of Crown Jewel. WWE wanted to keep this secret as tight as possible, so only a handful of people knew it was happening. Seth apparently found out just hours before the show, which has to create some complicated feelings. On one hand, Seth has always expressed love for his Shield brothers and said he'd be open to reunions if the timing was right. On the other hand, Seth has built his own identity separate from the Shield, and suddenly having Moxley back changes the entire landscape of Raw or SmackDown or wherever they end up. The dynamics between Roman, Seth, and Moxley are going to be the most compelling part of this storyline, because they're not the same people they were in 2014. They've all changed. They've all evolved. They've all had different experiences and followed different paths. Roman is now the tribal chief who demands acknowledgement and respect. Seth is the visionary who has become WWE's workhorse and most reliable performer. And Moxley is the battle-tested veteran who conquered the independent scene and became a world champion outside of WWE. Can these three coexist? Can they put aside their egos and their history? Can they recapture the magic they had over a decade ago? Those are the questions that will drive this storyline forward. What's your prediction? Will the Shield reunion last, or will it end with another betrayal? And if there's a betrayal, who do you think turns on who? Tell me in the comments. Now I want to talk about the business side of this deal because the numbers being thrown around are insane and they tell us a lot about WWE's current financial position and priorities. According to multiple sources, Jon Moxley signed a 3-year contract with WWE worth approximately $12 million. That works out to $4 million per year, which would make Moxley one of the highest paid wrestlers in WWE, comparable to what Roman Reigns and Brock Lesnar earn. That's a massive investment in a wrestler who is 39 years old and who hasn't been in WWE for 6 years. It shows just how badly WWE wanted Moxley back and how much value they see in the Shield reunion storyline. But that number also tells us something else: WWE has money to spend right now. Their new television deals are incredibly lucrative. Their Saudi Arabia contract is worth hundreds of millions. They're a profitable public company with resources that no other wrestling company can match. AEW, for all of Tony Khan's wealth, simply cannot compete with WWE's financial muscle when it comes to contracts. If WWE decides they want a wrestler and they're willing to pay top dollar, AEW can't match those offers. That's just reality. This creates a concerning precedent for AEW. If WWE can just swoop in and take AEW's top stars whenever they want by offering huge contracts, how does AEW maintain any stability? How do they build long-term storylines when their wrestlers might leave at any moment? Tony Khan is going to have to get creative with contracts and incentives to keep his remaining stars from jumping ship. Because you better believe that WWE is now looking at the rest of AEW's roster and identifying who else they might want to bring over. This could trigger a talent war unlike anything we've seen in wrestling since the Monday Night Wars. And if it does, WWE has the financial resources to win that war decisively. From a business perspective, do you think WWE overpaid for Jon Moxley, or is the Shield reunion worth every penny of that $12 million contract? Give me your analysis in the comments. Let's also discuss the reaction from the wrestling community because social media has been absolutely exploding since Moxley's return. Wrestling Twitter is divided into roughly 3 camps. First, there are the people who are absolutely thrilled about the Shield reunion and don't care about any of the controversy or business implications. They're just happy to see their favorite faction back together and creating dream matches. Second, there are the AEW loyalists who feel betrayed by Moxley and see this as validation that WWE is still the top company in wrestling. They're angry, disappointed, and questioning whether supporting AEW is even worth it if their biggest stars eventually go back to WWE anyway. Third, there are the cynical fans who saw this coming from a mile away and are saying "I told you so" to everyone who believed that wrestlers who left WWE would never go back. These fans view wrestling as a pure business where loyalty and principles don't matter, only money and opportunity matter. All 3 perspectives have validity. This situation is complex enough that reasonable people can disagree about what it means and whether it's good or bad for wrestling overall. Wrestling media has been working overtime covering this story. Every major wrestling news site has published multiple articles. YouTube is flooded with reaction videos and analysis. Podcasts are doing emergency episodes. This is the biggest wrestling story of 2025 and possibly the biggest story of the past several years. The mainstream sports media has even picked up on this story. ESPN covered it. Fox Sports covered it. Sports Illustrated covered it. Jon Moxley returning to WWE and the Shield reuniting transcends wrestling and becomes a legitimate sports entertainment story that appeals to casual fans who might not normally follow wrestling. That mainstream attention is exactly what WWE wants and exactly what makes this deal worth the money they paid Moxley. This isn't just about wrestling, it's about creating moments that generate buzz and attract new eyeballs to WWE's product. Which social media camp are you in? Thrilled about the reunion, angry about Moxley leaving AEW, or cynical and unsurprised? Tell me which one and why. Now let's talk about what this means for Crown Jewel and WWE's relationship with Saudi Arabia because the location of this reunion is significant. WWE has been running shows in Saudi Arabia for several years as part of a massive contract. These shows have been controversial due to Saudi Arabia's human rights record, but they've also been incredibly lucrative for WWE and have featured some major moments. Having the Shield reunion happen at Crown Jewel elevates that show and makes it feel more important in WWE's calendar. It's not just another international show, it's the place where one of wrestling's most important factions reunited. This also sends a message to Saudi Arabia that WWE is committed to making these shows special and giving them WrestleMania-level moments. That's important for maintaining the relationship and ensuring the lucrative contract continues. Some fans have criticized WWE for wasting the Shield reunion on a Saudi Arabia show instead of saving it for a major US pay-per-view or WrestleMania, but I actually think WWE made the right call. Having it happen at Crown Jewel makes that show feel special and gives fans around the world a reason to watch. Plus, this reunion is just the beginning. The real storyline will play out over the next year on Raw and SmackDown and at WWE's major pay-per-views. Crown Jewel was just the starting point, not the destination. Did WWE make the right call having the Shield reunion happen at Crown Jewel, or should they have saved it for a bigger show in the US? Let me know your thoughts. Let me address what Jon Moxley himself has said about this return because he released a statement shortly after Crown Jewel that attempts to explain his decision. According to Moxley's statement, he never intended to retire without reconciling with his Shield brothers. He said that leaving WWE was necessary for his mental health and creative fulfillment at the time, but he's always had love and respect for Roman and Seth. He said that when Triple H reached out and explained his vision for a Shield reunion and how it would be handled differently than the old WWE regime would have done it, Moxley was intrigued. Moxley claims he wouldn't have come back under Vince McMahon's leadership, but Triple H's WWE is different enough that Moxley feels comfortable returning. He says he'll have creative input into his character and storylines, and he's been promised that he won't be micromanaged the way he was during his first WWE run. Moxley also addressed his time in AEW, saying it was incredible and transformative and exactly what he needed at that point in his career. He thanked Tony Khan and the AEW locker room for supporting him, but he also said that he's at a stage in his career where completing his story with the Shield felt more important than anything else he could accomplish in wrestling. That statement is designed to placate multiple audiences simultaneously. It's trying to make AEW fans feel like his time there wasn't wasted. It's trying to make WWE fans excited about his return. It's trying to position this as a positive story about reconciliation rather than a cynical business decision. Whether you buy Moxley's explanation is up to you. Personally, I think there's probably some truth to it mixed with a healthy dose of PR spin and financial motivation that he's conveniently not mentioning. Do you believe Jon Moxley's explanation for why he returned to WWE, or do you think it's just PR spin to justify taking WWE's money? Be honest in the comments. As we approach the end of this discussion, I want to talk about what happens next because the immediate future of WWE programming is going to be absolutely must-see television. The Raw or SmackDown after Crown Jewel is going to be huge. That's when we'll get the full Shield reunion segment with all three members together in the ring. That's when we'll hear promos from Roman, Seth, and Moxley about what this reunion means. That's when WWE will start establishing the direction for this storyline. Will the Shield immediately target the Bloodline? Will they go after championships? Will there be an outside faction or group that challenges them and unites them against a common enemy? The possibilities are endless. I'm also fascinated to see how WWE integrates Moxley's AEW character into his WWE presentation. Moxley evolved significantly during his time away from WWE. He became more violent, more intense, and more unpredictable. Will WWE allow him to maintain that edge, or will they try to sand off his rough edges and make him more PG-friendly? The Shield's original appeal was that they felt dangerous and unpredictable. If WWE can recapture that energy with the matured, evolved versions of these three wrestlers, this could be the best iteration of the Shield we've ever seen. There's also the question of how long this reunion lasts. Is this a short-term nostalgia play that lasts a few months before they split up again? Or is WWE committed to keeping the Shield together for an extended run, possibly all the way through WrestleMania and beyond? My hope is that WWE doesn't rush this. Take time to build stories. Let the reunion breathe. Give fans time to appreciate having the Shield back before you inevitably break them up again for the next singles push. What's your fantasy booking for the Shield over the next year? Give me your detailed plans in the comments. I want to see your creativity. Let me wrap this up by acknowledging that this situation is complicated and there's no simple right answer about whether Moxley's return is good or bad for wrestling. On one hand, the Shield reunion is objectively exciting. It's a dream storyline that will create incredible moments and matches. It will draw fans to WWE programming. It will generate mainstream attention. From a pure entertainment perspective, this is undeniably a positive development. On the other hand, the circumstances around Moxley's return raise legitimate questions about principles, loyalty, and whether anything wrestlers say about their motivations can be trusted. It reinforces WWE's position as the dominant force in wrestling and makes every other promotion feel secondary. It potentially hurts AEW at a critical time in their development. Both things can be true simultaneously. We can be excited about the Shield while also acknowledging the problematic elements of how this came about. What I do know is that wrestling is going to be very interesting for the foreseeable future. This reunion changes everything. It changes WWE's creative landscape. It changes AEW's roster and future plans. It changes how wrestlers think about their careers and whether leaving WWE is truly permanent. Jon Moxley's return at Crown Jewel 2025 will be remembered as one of the defining moments of this era of professional wrestling. Whether it's remembered positively or negatively depends on what happens next and whether WWE delivers on the promise of this incredible moment. So here's what I need from you to close this out: hit that like button if you're excited about the Shield reunion regardless of any controversy. Subscribe to Wrestling Newsletter because we're going to be covering every single development in this story as it unfolds. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any updates. And most importantly, leave a comment answering these final questions. Are you Team Moxley, supporting his decision to return to WWE? Or are you disappointed in him for going back after everything he said? Do you think this reunion will be handled well by WWE, or will they mess it up? And finally, what's the one match you want to see now that the Shield is back together? I'm reading every comment, so don't hold back. Tell me exactly how you feel about this entire situation. This is the biggest wrestling story of the year, and I want to hear your perspective on it. The Shield is back. Jon Moxley is back in WWE, and wrestling will never be the same. Whether that's good or bad is for you to decide. This has been Wrestling Newsletter, and I'll see you in the next video with more breaking news and analysis from the wild world of professional wrestling.